to the Obsidian Projects podcast, SOS, sharing our stories. We invite guests from all different walks of life to come on the show to share their experiences and their stories in a hope to inspire and empower people around the globe that could possibly be suffering in similar situations or can relate to the stories in some way, shape, or form. Before we get started on this latest episode of the Obsidian Project's SOS, if you or anyone you know does relate to any of the information shared in these stories, we do have some helpful numbers and contact details. For those listening, or for those in need of any immediate help, please contact Lifeline on 131114 or Beyond Blue at 1300 224636 for those in Australia. Or they also have a website, beyondblue.com.au. If anyone listening to this outside of Australia, feel free to contact us at theobsidianproject.com. Our email addresses are there, and we'll direct you to the best available source in your area. Thanks very much again, guys. Show your support to anyone around you and share this podcast to anyone you think may need it. All right, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, and welcome back to the Obsidian Project podcast. We're in episode 12 and having our second attempt at one of these Zoom podcasts, which is pretty cool. Got myself a little mixing deck, I guess you could call it now, to help do this. But we're in episode 12. And we're here live today with Chris Adams. And Chris is a good friend of mine, one of my former PT clients when he was over here in Perth. Recently, well, I say recently, it's been about 3-4 years now, isn't it? Yeah. 3-4 years. Moved over to Sydney for new work, and we kept in contact back and forth. But previous to that, me and Chris were in constant contact. I was helping him out with a few things, and since that time, he's seen what we've been doing here on the Obsidian Project podcast, and he's wanted to share his little bit of a side of a story into our relationship, how we met, and his life through football training over here in Australia. And may I formally introduce Mr. Chris Adams. Welcome, Chris.
Thanks, Joey. It's good to see you again, mate. I know it's obviously difficult circumstances and different circumstances that we have to see each other through a computer screen, but that's the current world that we find ourselves in, and I think it's slowly helping people get a little bit more connected anyway.
Yeah, that's true. That's very true, mate. So it's I just want to thank you, mate, for obviously this podcast is all about listening to people and hearing people's stories about their battles with mental health and learning a little bit about how people deal with it in a regular basis. And I know a little bit about what you were doing over here in WA in terms of football, in the development of youth development through football here in Western Australia. But when you moved over to Sydney, obviously that was a bit of a different job and a bit of a step up as well. So talk us through what it is that you do at the moment.
Yeah, no. So my journey, you can probably tell by my accent, similar to Joey's. Mine's a little bit posher, but we from the UK, from Essex. The only way is Essex. For those who watch the TV show, it's nothing like that, I do assure you. And then I moved over to West Australia to 2012. Always worked in football, loved sport, loved being around what sport brings to the community through the mateship, through the sportsmanship, through the respect and responsibility that it gives you, and then I was very fortunate to go into coaching, and then spend some time coaching over in West Australia at Coburn City Soccer Club over there, and then to then work for the State Federation in more of a sort of like a game development, community development role, that drifted into the career that I'm now in, which is actually the coach development and running coaching courses for coaches, be it dads and mums that are the last ones to stand back when they sign their son or daughter up, and they then get thrust into the spotlight to be the coach, right through to sort of professional coaches at the towards the more pointy end, who are saying that semi-professional, sub-elite, touching on the A-League level sort of coaches. And then then you're right. I then sort of made the move to head over to Sydney, over to New South Wales, to work for a soccer association on the Northern Beaches, a beautiful part of Sydney. If you haven't been here, I do encourage you to come to the Northern Beaches, and sort of experience the home and away life. And then now working for the State Federation in that coach development space, more out of the community space now, and more towards that pointy end, sort of helping coaches that are now looking to maybe make it a career. How I can support them to then help them be the best possible coach they can be, whatever level they find themselves coaching at. So that I do count myself extremely fortunate every day to be able to wake up and put a football tracksuit on, and be able to spend probably a large chunk of my week out on a football pitch. Obviously can't do it at the moment, but seems as if there's light at the end of the tunnel, and we can certainly get back to it sooner rather than later.
Yeah, that's so good. I mean, it's good to see such a moving career path. I mean, moving all the way from the UK to Australia, which is obviously the popularity of soccer or football over here is very different than it is back home in the UK. I mean, I think it's as a kids sport, it's the biggest kids sport in the country, right? But for the adult sport, it's like way down on the ladder in terms of popularity. So it's good to see, man, that you moved over and still managed to make such a good progression in that area.
Yeah, look, it took a huge amount of time. I was at a bit of a crossroads in my life when I did actually make the decision to sort of get on the Qantas jumbo jet from Heathrow and fly over to Perth. It was I was at university training to be a teacher. I was involved in football back in the UK, and then I sort of thrust myself into it. That look, just sort of go to university for 3 years, train to be a teacher, just in case you can't make it as a football coach. And I sort of had that mindset that football was going to be what I always wanted to do, but you should have your backup plan. And then I kind of went to university as a more mature student. I don't think you're ever fully mature when you're a student, but when I was 21, I'd already done 2 or 3 years of coaching at secondary school in a football college. So I was around that sort of teaching sort of background. And then I went to university, and it just wasn't for me, to be honest. And I kind of said to myself, I had a bit of a moment where it was, look, you're all already almost setting yourself up to fail, because you're saying that you're only doing this as a backup if you can't make it as a football coach. So I'm spending a lot of my energy doing something just in case, rather than going, you know what, I'm going to put that 50% energy, which is the just in case, put it into football coaching, and then that's going to be 100% of my energy. So I dropped out of university, and then my dad sort of said to me, look, that's absolutely fine, but you have to do something. So I said, look, and I had some friends in Perth that came over to play for the cricket club I was at as like an overseas pro. And then he said, look, and just sort of head over to Australia. And then I was sort of very lucky where I landed was by a football club, a fantastic football club with some fantastic people that are lifelong friends. And I think the benefit of when you join a football club or a cricket club or a rugby club or a gym or any sort of community hub like that is that you instantly feel connected to something, and then you feel a part of a family, and you've suddenly got 10 friends who have then got partners who have then got, and then you just feel a sense of community. So that's why I'm such a big believer in community sport, and that's where I think throughout this COVID-19 situation, I think community sport is only going to grow and get better, because everyone's missing that day-to-day life things, but they're missing that human connection that sport provides, or going into a gym and seeing 6-10 other people. It was a hard slog. I had to do a lot of work to get into a full-time job, because you're right, football's not at the forefront here. It isn't an AFL. It isn't a cricket. It's not even here in New South Wales. It's not even say say like a rugby league here, which is probably just as popular, if not more, as the AFL over in the Wild West, over in West Australia. But it's so I had to work very hard to get into a full-time position. Had to do a lot of sacrifices. Had to spend a lot of time networking, volunteering, doing jobs that some may have seen under the qualifications that I had. But ultimately, that time and sacrifice got me into the position where I am now, and still having to make sacrifices like we all do.
Yeah, it's good, man. It's it's good that you've got that. You really followed what it is that you wanted to do. Like I loved a little bit about, you had that 50%, that you were giving to something else just in case. But at the end of the day, that could be the downfall or it could have been the downfall in what stopped you from, following what it was that you wanted to do. And, I was just, we did a podcast, episode 11 last week with a beautiful lady over in America. She's called Kiara. And one of the big things that we spoke about, which was so similar, is the need for more community. Like it's community involvement, people getting together within a community and what it brings. And it's like, I love that it's on two different perspectives. Like she's talking about a very poverty stricken, and I use this inverted commas, Black America, in terms of creating a bigger community there to help support. And you see it in such a different world over here in Australia, within a different aspect in terms of sport and what that can bring for a community as well, which, it's a really nice thing to be a part of.
No, for sure. And I think that's where soccer's, I've said soccer, sorry. That's where football's probably, sorry, Dad. So that's where football's, I think in this country, it is a little bit different, and its era's gone by way before my time. But if you look at a lot of the football clubs, and I know the football club that you're obviously connected to, Southern Spirit, is obviously a Portuguese sort of background, isn't it?
Italian, I think. Italian, Portuguese, a bit of the mix there too.
Yeah. Sort of like a European background, anyway.
Yeah,
but it's historically that was how the football clubs were formed. If you look in Perth, you've got like your Perth Azzurri, you've got like your Bayswater City Soccer Club, who are say like the Italian clubs. You've got your Stirling Macedonias that are like the Macedonia clubs. The club that I was at, Coburn City, they were sort of two clubs that merged together. One was Spiva Dalmatinac, that was that Croatian Yugoslavian background, and then you had Coburn United, that was sort of very much a Scottish, British, sort of Anglo-Saxon club. And then that was what football in this country was that it's and then I'm not saying that I was a part of that, because it was way before my time, but it was that they were that sense of community that you would go down to let's say like a Greek club like a Floret Athena, or here in Sydney like a Sydney Olympic Football Club, and there would be 2,000-3,000 Greek people there, because that was their sense of community to the sort of like the little fix of back home in Greece. And then the same thing was happening down the road at the Italian club. And then so that was where, for me, Australia is such a migrant country. And then I think that's just where community sport and community clubs play such a vital role in helping people to settle.
It's you see it like our football club's a little bit different. We're on a little bit of the smaller ladder, but we get the what do they call them, the Southern Spirit Ultras that come down, and they come home and away. Like they support the club, they come to training, they sit there, drink beers, cheer the lads on. It's it's not like a big passionate soccer club like such as a West Ham United or an Arsenal, you know what I mean? But or a Perth Glory. But there is that passion and spirit there, which it is a massive part of sport and community over here, which is really important. And it seems like a path that you're really happy that you got involved with. And knowing you from what we've been through, man, I think without that passion, you could be in a very different space. Like,
Yeah,
with some of the things that you've gone through in life and you've experienced recently, in the past 5 years, so to speak, it's probably one of the big things that's kept you, doing what you're doing, because you're following something you're passionate about, right?
absolutely. And look, for me, like, I sort of look at it and go, would I have had a good life if I would have continued my path at university and been a PE teacher? 100% I would. Like it wasn't as if I was going from say career A to career Z. They would have both been very good careers, and actually probably teaching would have probably been a little bit more stable. But it's would it have been something that would have really wanted me to get up in the morning, and something that throughout the tough days you really are committed to. And that I'm very, very fortunate that I work in something that I love, highly enjoy it. I'm a fan of it. Does it have its downsides? Yes, because you kind of don't ever switch off from what you love, and then
Yeah.
what you love becomes your job, and it strays into strange into that sort of dangerous territory where where like you always feel like you're working, and then you do have to get that balance, and then I've had to find things that are maybe my escape from football. And that sounds a little bit silly, I'm sure, that sport, and your hobbies, they're your pastimes outside of work, but I need to find something that's my pastime out of work.
Yeah.
And that's where I've sort of been very lucky now that I sort of met my wife, now sort of recently married, that you find those pastimes that are that little bit different, so you can switch off, but you still need to find that balance between that you get home from work at 6 o'clock, you've had an average day at work like we all do. You have good days, you have your bad days, you have your absolute horror show days. But even if I've had say one of the less fun days, I still want to get home and turn the telly on and watch the EPL highlights. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's finding that balance that it doesn't absorb your whole life, because I think that's dangerous territory when that starts to happen.
Yeah, and I think it's like that. You mentioned a good word, which is balance there, which I like that you picked up on. Is that it can happen when I'm sure there's a lot of people that will follow a passion and it will literally consume them to the point where it becomes almost something that they hate, because it's like they can't escape from, like, especially something like football. It's everywhere. It's on TV. So you've got your club that you like to follow. Then you always want to read about the latest news and what's going on in the world, especially from being away from the EPL over in England. And then especially when you're going to games and just watching the local clubs, then you go to work and it's just football, 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 football. You do need to find that balance, and that's where certain mental health issues can come in. Like, even in areas where you're not following a job that's something you're extremely passionate about, but let's say you come in home from work and you might not have the greatest home life at the moment, or you've got a work life that's also a little bit stressful. Is you need to find those things that you can escape, not reality, but those things that some way you can distance these things for yourself, so you can have time to process, to calm down, to really understand the thoughts, the feelings, the emotions that go on, that little bit of release. And I think that's why a lot of people will go to the gym, for example, to have that little bit of time for themselves, to get that physical and mental release. And also, it's we need to have things for ourselves, and I think that's important. But I know this is working in a gym, and after speaking to you a little bit off air, it's similar. Is that let's say for the gym, for example, you go into your gym, you have a workout, and somebody wants to talk about the membership, and you can't tell them to piss off. You've got to be diplomatic and go, oh yeah, sure, no worries, but then boom, your time's killed, right? So it's hard to try and find those little lines of how to put them, how to, I don't want to use the word escape, but it's like it's more allowing yourself some distance and some peace from separating pleasure from work, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, no, I think that's spot on, mate. And I'm very fortunate that I, the team that I'm working with at the minute, I've got two sort of very, very good friends that I work with, and that has its pros, but also the cons are that when you catch up socially, you end up talking about bloody work. So
Yeah.
you need to build those boundaries, and we've sort of made a saying that is, like we have to put the ball away tonight, or it's, and if someone starts to stray into some conversations, it's like, come on, mate, like just like put the ball away. So I think you are 100% right that you need that. There's times where you need to be on, and then there's times where you need to be off, and that's what I found. I think you just need to educate your friends on it a little bit, and that's what I found that I would say go from my 9 to 5 at the federation. I'd then go down to the local club when I was in West Australia and stay connected there and sort of either help out with training or still be in the semi like official roles that I had, even though I couldn't really have an actual role at the club because I was at the federation. But you just have to educate people, and it's almost like the head coach is a Sparky, and it's like, well, you've just finished your job, you're now coming to your hobby. It's as if you just finished your job and I'm asking you now to come around to my house to rewire the front room.
Yeah.
So it's just separating those boundaries a little bit. But so for me, it's just how you communicate that message to your friends. But are there times where you just need to completely withdraw? Absolutely. Like there's been times where I've gone to games and I've turned up 5 minutes before kickoff, and I'm sort of finding the furthest seat away from the grandstand I can find, and then that's not me trying to be arrogant and say that I'm anyone important and every single person is going to want to speak to me, but I just want to watch the match. You know what I
mean? Yeah. Yeah, I know what you mean, man. I think what's important, I like the we got to put the ball away thing. I think that's a big thing with work friends, family, is lines of communication. Like it's almost like you've come up with a safe word for talking about work. It's polite. You're not just going, mate, can we stop fucking talking about work? You're actually saying, hey lads, you've sat down, you talked about this together, and you've gone, this is what we're going to do if we're in that space where we want a little bit of peace and quiet from work. And it's it's a nice soft opening.
Yeah, I'm the worst culprit for it, to be honest, mate. Sometimes I'm my own downfall that I'll sort of get the conversation back onto it. And there's a difference between when you're with your mates out for dinner, having a curry and having a few beers or whatever, or you are, I don't know, sort of sitting on the beach here in Australia, and you just talk about your opinions on, say, like the World Cup game from the night before. That's a different conversation than say suddenly when you start to dissect the game from a tactical point of view. Then you're like, come on, put the ball away. I'm the most guilty person for it, but yeah, it's the key word's balance, and I think you hit the nail on the head there, Joey.
Yeah. Well, where did you? So obviously, between this, I know from knowing you when you were over here in WA, we got to meet through a couple of, I guess you would say, common friends. Through obviously it was Chris and then Aaron as well. Some good common friends there. We got to start training after you'd done a fair bit of work with Chris as well. And I know he helped you lose heap of weight on the scales there. And I helped with that along the way. Once you got into your rhythm, we started doing some conditioning sessions and carried on the process, so to speak. And how did you find that, you came to our gym, we started building up a friendship and things like that. And there was a point where we got to where you started to feel comfortable to start talking to me about certain things that had been going on. And then we developed a close relationship in terms of, just having an open conversation about about like mental health and what's going on, because you took quite a swing, didn't you? Like going from hitting the gym to setting a goal to get to this weight, and then get to a different weight and get to a different weight. Talk us through, like, you know, what was sort of the process when you first jumped on board, looking to get yourself fit?
Yeah, no, it's for me, it's something I've always had the little monkey in my head or on your shoulder, whatever you want to say, around my weight. It's something as a kid. I wouldn't necessarily say that I got bullied. That's a very strong word to say. But you know, lads are lads, and then like you get the odd comment here and there, and I always kind of used to, even as a young kid, I used to always compare myself to other people, and I used to always compare myself to my older brother, and he was a completely different body type to me, like all of us are. You know what I mean? Like you get similarities, but everyone's different. And then I used to always compare myself to Matt, and I used to sort of feel, you know, he was older, and everyone used to say, "Oh yeah, like Matt's so good looking," and then sure, hopefully they were saying it about me as well, but I never used to hear it. So you like, you kind of compare yourself to that, and then from there, I always used to compare myself to other people, and I was of an era way before, and I kind of think our era, Joey, and I'll include you in it as well. That we was probably the last generation before the social media went gangbusters. You know, like we had like the MSN, and then we had the MySpace, but we weren't all the stuff that's going on now, where it's really in your face and it's really a part of day-to-day life as a kid. For me, I used to always compare myself, and then, but it never really came to grips with it. And then I went to, obviously moved to Perth, left my family, and then I was in that 21, 22 age where it's your first time where you're really independent. I was living in my own place, and you're kind of going out. You're not really eating right. You know what I mean? It's just easy to grab a takeaway. I was in that balance where I working in sport, same as you, working in a gym. You're up early, you're out till late, so you become a little bit lazy with your nutrition. And then I got to a point where I used to always go home at Christmas. And I kind of lead two lives, where I've got sort of the Australian Chris, or actually say I've now got three lives, to be honest. I've got Perth Chris, I've got Sydney Chris, and I've got sort of Essex Chris. But at that time, it was still Perth Chris, and it was still sort of Essex Chris. That I'd always go home at Christmas, and then I remember going back one year. It would have been probably 2014. It was around Christmas 2014, and then, you know, like everyone's taking photos, you're out and that sort of stuff, you know, and then it all goes up on Facebook, and then you kind of see the comments and stuff, and then it's there was one that really stood out with me, and I won't say who because they are a friend, and it was a laddish comment, and then I know it wasn't meant with any real venom, but it was but it really stuck with me. It was and it really hit me. It was right. So there's Matt, who is my brother. There's John, but who's the guy in the middle, and who ate Chris, and like it's a very funny sort of banter thing. Like you can't look back at it and go, that's actually top drawer banter, but it really really hit me. And then that was like wouldn't necessarily say like a wake up call, but it was like, I remember being on the plane at Heathrow, flying back sort of early January, going like, I'm gonna go back next year and I'm gonna show them. You know what I mean? It was that mentality. So then that was where I sort of spent some time with Aaron, and then I sort of said to him, look, you know, I'm not happy. I'm not happy with how I feel, how I look. I work in sport. I want to be a good role model. You know what I mean? And then I was never what I would say was dangerously unhealthy or obese. You know what I mean? But it was probably carrying too many pounds. So then I sort of went into the gym, and then just sort of things started to happen, started to get that routine, started to train with Chris. And then we sort of set some goals to say, look, let's get down to this, let's get down to that. And then when I went in, I was around the 118, 119 sort of kilos. So stone, that's what, probably just under about 18 stone, right? Probably 17 and a half towards 18 stone. And then I was like, fuck, that's pretty steep. And then we said, look, let's get down a little bit. And then I set myself a goal of getting to 100. And then, like anything, you start to get into it. The positive vibe starts to happen because you're moving, you're feeling better. The compliments start to happen. You love the compliments. And then you hit your goal. And then I remember getting to 99.9999. And again, I was
a photo.
yeah. And then and then I whacked that photo up online. And then the comments like, bang, oh, like you look amazing. What's happened, da 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 da. And it becomes a bit of an addiction. It really did become a bit of a, like let's keep going. You know what I mean? Like, let's keep going. Let's go 95. Let's go 90. Let's go 85. And it's like, if you've seen me, I'm a big 6 foot guy. Like for me, sort of, it was extreme. And then that was where I went too far. It was I went too far in the exercising side. That I was training 2, 3, 4 times a day, and then not in a. And then some might say that that's a fantastic thing, but I wasn't training for myself. I was training for other people, to prove to other people. And then that led to sort of things with like the eating and I think we had that conversation, didn't we? Sort of halfway through the year, around that. Look, I'm not actually probably doing this the right way. And it really, to come to terms with it and to be in a position to admit it was that I was actually really struggling with like an eating disorder, and like really struggling with making myself sick and sort of being, and then to actually admit that I was, and I still am, to be honest, struggling with bulimia, around actually purging after eating, and making myself sick.
I mean, you mentioned one thing there, about you were doing it for other people, and I think that's something that's really key, in terms of people that may listen to this, is that there's always a reason that you start out on a journey, whether that's a physical journey, it's a mental health thing, and anything really. There's always a reason, but I think this is a common, especially when it comes down to body issues or weight issues or image issues, so to speak, that it may tend to start off as something for somebody else, or something because somebody said something. It's a spark that goes, holy fuck, maybe I do need to make a change. But then there's that point where you have to go and to sort of look at and go, whoa, like, why am I doing this? What am I doing this for now? Because there's a certain amount of time's gone, you've reached certain goals. And I think this is where I think it's lost a lot in the physical health industry, is the mental health support, in terms of such a big weight loss journey, man. Because that's like, what, about 30 plus kilos must be easy.
I think the lowest I got to before I got on the flight to go home at Christmas, I think we trained about 4 o'clock, and then and then I jumped on the Emirates A380 at about 7:30. It was I think I got down to 93. So that's what 117 to 93. That's a fair chunk.
Yeah, that's a fair chunk. And it's there's that mental health aspect is like, whoa, there's got to be a a learning stage as well with the mental state, because that Chris who was 117 is now coming down to this Chris who is a lot lighter, but that same the same mental state is still with him. Obviously he's proud of his achievements, but the reasons behind he was doing it all are still stuck there, which is, and I hold my hand up, is, it's something that we never really talked about through our journey, was like, what are the main things we're doing this for. Obviously it's to lose a little bit of weight, but there's something deeper. There's other layers to it, which I think gets missed in
Mm.
in weight loss journeys and image journeys and things like that, is
Yeah,
the real reason behind it.
yeah, that's spot on, mate. And then for me, it was that I remember it clearly was that the I wasn't nervous about the first trip home because I knew that I'd lost weight, and everyone was like, "Oh my god, you look unbelievable." And then it was it was that experience. It was right once I'd landed and everyone's seen me and gone, "Oh fucking hell!" Like he's lost a load of weight. I was already thinking about next year, going, I don't want to go back to Perth, and then come December, what it would have been 2016 or 15, whatever, the year after, going, he's just whacked it all on again. You know what I mean? Like I was more nervous about the second trip than I was the first trip, or the first photo come getting off the plane after being at home for Christmas and seeing everyone, and then the first photo come February or March of he's just lumped it all back on again. So I was more, that was the biggest thing after that was it wasn't the losing the weight, because that's the elation, that's the buzz, that's the compliments, that's that whole euphoria of getting that public recognition. It was once I'd lost it, it was the pressure of keeping it off. And that was where it really spiraled.
Yeah, and I think you mentioned before about social media as well, and I think this is one of the big things that comes along with this evolvement of social media. We're always looking for those hits. We're always looking for those likes, those comments, those little bits of, yeah, man, you've done a good job. And it's like, yeah, I feel better about myself because somebody's giving me a compliment, right? And it's where the trouble. I like that you picked up that the second trip was where the pain was going to come from, because you set yourself a standard in your own head in terms of what people might think, and then now you got to live up to that standard, which could be so high because of the massive achievement that you've made. It's like, how do you one up something like that? And what it's come from is it's a massive hit of dopamine. So dopamine is like a short-term reward system. So if we build a journey or an expectation on these sort of dopamine hits, it's basically we're looking for those little bits of compliments, likes, messages, shows of support. We're looking from it externally, and it gives us that, yes, I feel good. But then 10-15 minutes later, you back to those comments, those thoughts. They're not as important anymore, because it's not about how we're feeling internally. It's because we're doing it for the people around us. We're doing it for the people outside for that support. And that next step that you've gone on is, the question, I guess, was, what's the next step? What am I doing this for now? There's a moment there that what could have been grasped in terms of, okay, let's sit down and really reassess this thing. I've proved to myself that I can do it. And so, all these people, that have shown me support, how am I going to follow on from that? Like what's going to be next? And I think it gets missed for a lot of people. And I hold myself accountable to this too. Is like, we sometimes we get trapped in, it's like, well, we need that instant reward, that those likes, those comments. If that's what we're doing it for, we become addicted to that feeling, that dopamine feeling, but we forget what it is we're doing it for ourselves. Are we doing it to lose weight? Because from my more recent experience in terms of mixing the mental health world and the physical health world, the majority of people aren't going to the gym for a physical reason. If you dig a little bit deeper, there's some sort of mental health capacity, and that's not in a term of like there's some sort of medical problem, but it's to feel more confident, to have that better level of confidence about them, to help with stress relief from work. There's all those mental health aspects going there, and I think the once you talk onto you've got to that point of making yourself sick and suffering from bulimia. It's got to that stage where, whoa, like I've got to live to this standard. I need this feeling. I've got to, if as soon as you step back a little bit, because before there was 117 kilo and 93 kilo, there was a massive gap that you could have moved in between there. Even if you went back home at 105 kilo, you would have still got that, oh, good job, Chris, well done. But now you've shortened it down to like, well, I went there at 93 kilo, and now I've got to work within 93 kilo and something less, which is a much shorter window, and it's a lot harder to maintain, right?
No, and then that was where, for me, I think, sort of like what you said there about people aren't training for the physical things, and that was, I was massively guilty of that, and to be honest, I still am. Still, that it was, I was never one to, after a workout, be like, yes, I've just lifted X amount of kgs, and then next week the goal is to go from lifting that amount to this amount, or it was, I've just ran a big block run in this time, I want to try and beat it by this time. It was all a vehicle to get the scales down lower. So everything, the only thing I was fixed on was the scales and the kgs. It was never how much I was lifting, how high I was jumping, how fast I was running, how fast I was rowing, how much longer we could go in the boxing ring. It was never for me around that, or it was never hey, you've lost all this weight. And then, as I said, I was never dangerously obese where I was like fucking having to be in a wheelchair. But it was, you know what I mean? It was, and didn't have heart problems, didn't have that sort of stuff. But it was never a let's lose this weight and then when you're 50, your heart's going to be thanking you. It was just no, bang, I just want to be at these kgs.
Yeah. So
and it was sorry to cut you off. It was that I would. It was a real fixation with the scales. I'd finish my workout, and before I'd even had a shower, it was bang on the scales, bang on the scales, bang on the scales, and it was yeah, it was, and then that was where the sort of the being sick and the bulimia really took hold.
So when you got to that stage, obviously where you were really battling with those numbers, now I guess you're almost twisting the logic. It's not about, you've gone from doing it for a reason in terms of trying to please other people to now gotten so stuck in your mind, so to speak, with looking at the analytics of everything in terms of numbers, that you've gone through this process of a food eating disorder in terms of the bulimia. And like, what sort of the feelings were going on around that time when you first started to acknowledge it for yourself that, man, I might have a little bit of an issue going on here?
Hide it.
Yeah.
Don't tell anyone. Don't admit it to yourself. Put it in a box at the back of your head and forget about it. That was for me. It took me a long while to admit it and come to terms with it. And then look, I would go back as far. I remember being 11, 12 years old, and Um, yeah, sounds crazy saying it now, but that sticking a toothbrush down my throat to be sick when I was like 12 years old, and then I don't know why I was doing it, but didn't know what it would do to me, and it wasn't that I'd gorged on bloody a massive meal. It was just something that I thought, well, if food goes in your body and that's what makes you put on weight and be bigger, then you need to get that food out of you. So it was something that I'd, and that was very rare. That was sort of 2 or 3 times a year that would happen.
Yeah.
But then it was something I'd had in me before this, but this was the vehicle that really turned into a bit of a monster. And then I kind of always just was in massive denial about it. Would never reference it as I would never say the word bulimia, and even to hear you just say it, then it still sort of gives me a bit of a shudder.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's I would always say, oh, yeah, I was just sort of making myself sick. You know what I mean? And it was at its worst. There was periods where I'd be at work, I'd have my lunch, I'd go in the staff toilet before going into a staff meeting, and I would have sicked up my lunch. I remember being on a flight home at Christmas, without sounding like a bit of a wanker, sort of had enough air miles to fly first class. That I remember eating unbelievable food, like unbelievable food. I'm talking like caviar and top steak and like the best food you can ever imagine. Something that only a handful of people get to experience. And I remember eating it and then being sick on the plane. And then that was where I knew I had a problem. And then for half an hour afterwards, I would feel like garbage. I would hate myself for doing it. Why have you done it again? You know what I mean? You feel dirty, but then you just goes to the back of the mind. Bang! Right, you know, we're off. You know what I mean? So it was guilt. It was denial, and I kind of managed to just live with it. And I don't ever think I'm going to be cured of it. So it's always going to be there. Look, there's still times where I'll do it. It's just swings and roundabouts but it's at its worst, it's after every meal, and sort of thankfully it hasn't been like that for about 18 months.
Good, man. It's good to hear.
But every now and then, do I still do it? Absolutely. Did it 2 days ago, you know, but it isn't as out of control as it was, but it's something that I know I'm going to have to live with and manage, and I've got better at doing that.
So where would you say the difference between, obviously, you know, you're still on a journey and there's still a lot to learn about what it all is. I mean, there's still, I think there's still a little bit of a depth in your mind if you ever decide to go down that path, in terms of understanding where this thing's really come from. Like, there's obviously, like, the weight loss journey is one thing, and understanding that and understanding, you know, how that's come to play into making this come apart. But, you know, as you said before, you know, the first time that you really had an experience with this, or you were quite young. So there's obviously another couple of layers to go through there. But without going into that side of things, it's like, how do you think you know, once you started to understand that, you know, this recent episode with dealing with it all, how the difference in feeling from acknowledgement and realizing that this is a part of your life, and that, so to speak, a little bit accepting it and starting to grow with it. What's the difference between that and, obviously now, man, you've got the courage to come and speak about it on here with me on this podcast. And what's the difference in feeling? Like, you know, how does it make you feel to be sitting here understanding, you know, that I'm managing this, I'm taking control of it. Yes, I slip up every now and again, but you know, this is part of me.
I think it came from it not being a secret anymore. And then I think whenever I spoke to people about it, and this is no disrespect for you, who I spoke to about it, was that you weren't a part of my inner sanctum sort of personal life, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, we were friends, but we weren't, I don't know, say, family, or we weren't seeing each other all the time, or we didn't have a yes, we had a connection, but it wasn't a, you know what I mean, like a real,
Yeah.
you know, without sort of saying that I hate you.
Mate, nothing but love for you, buddy. Nothing but love. But yeah, I know what you mean. It's like, you know, in all honesty, I think I'd only known you in maybe 6 months, a year, something like that. So we weren't
So
like best buddies
was
or not, but we were friends.
yeah. So like when I spoke to you about it, it was more the that was the um, sort of like a professional speak. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
I was speaking to like a professional. It was, and then that was where I'd got it off my chest, but I hadn't exposed it to the people that I'd loved and the people that I really cared about, who would know it and would see it and would be able to really help me on a day-to-day basis when it was 7 o'clock at night. I've just had a pizza with my friends, and they see me sneak off to the toilet. You know what I mean? So it wasn't until some very close friends actually discovered it. I didn't tell them; they discovered it. They sort of saw me at the barbecue at their houses, and they either heard it or saw it, or could see the patterns that after I'd sort of had the cheeseburger in the Wharf Bar, I'd sort of bang a massive jug of water and then go, right, I'm just off for a wee. You know what I mean? Like they saw it, and then we spoke about it as it was sort of people that were in my day-to-day life who sort of meant a lot to me and do mean a lot to me. And then my now wife at the time, obviously finding out about it, and again, I didn't tell them. They found out and they discovered it. And then I think I was very blind to it, that no one knew about it. And I was like, I'm sure people at work knew about it. I'm sure people at work could see it, could see signs. And I was very ignorant and blind to it. But then, so like my wife discovered it, who was my girlfriend at the time. It would be that we'd come back from a night out. I'd had food I probably didn't feel I should have had. And then, I'm just having a shower, and I'd turn the shower on, turn the music on, and then she'd then see me come out the bathroom, and I was stone cold dry, as if I hadn't had a shower, because I was just using that to mask me being sick in the toilet. Okay. So it wasn't until they found out about it that I really had a little bit of help, if that makes sense, and actual help. And then that is no discredit to you, and I've never gone to see what I would call a professional about this, because I didn't want to admit it. So the only real person I've actually probably spoken to is yourself and Jay at the gym as well. Yeah. And a few people at the gym here that I've been to in Sydney.
Yeah.
But I've never been to see a professional per se. So it wasn't until the people that I love found out that they then had that support of, well, just asking those questions. Well, why are you doing it? And then it was because they knew about it. There'd be times where I'd be out for dinner with my now wife before we was married. We'd have a lovely meal, a couple of glasses of wine. And then it was like, I'm going to the toilet. And I'm like, my wife's out there sitting all alone. Or sorry, my then at the time fiance or girlfriend, whatever, was outside sitting at a table alone. I'm in a daggy old toilet in some shitty restaurant in Sydney. And trust me, I did it in some horrible fucking Chinese restaurants or Indian restaurant toilets. And I did it in some very nice places, like on a Qantas first class jet. But it's you. I was like, what am I doing? I was like, there's someone outside there that loves me, and I'm in here, and she's out there on her own, and then like she's out there on her own. So, it, probably a really long answer to your question, but it wasn't until people that I held dearly and loved that were in my day-to-day life discovered it, that it really started to make a difference.
Yeah. I know I guess that's the thing. It's once if you find a way to be confronted with it on a daily basis, like you said, it is one thing opening up to someone like me, but you don't, I guess you're not really accountable to me in that retrospect, because I think we saw each other maybe a couple of times a week for training, and then maybe go for a beer every now and again and a curry, but it wasn't like consistent contact. It was at the most, it was probably about an hour and a half, and that would be maybe that'd be the longest in like maybe about a month or something like that. So it's like once you suppose you get in front of these people that you're a lot closer to, you see on a more daily basis, you are confronted by it, and you do start to think a little bit deeper, and once they acknowledge that this is a part, then you start to challenge yourself a little bit more. And we go back to community, like we were talking together about sport right at the start of this. It's like once you build a community, that's where you can start to grow. Like you moved over from England to Perth in Australia, and you started to build that community within your football. You started to grow as a person. You started to make friends. You started to grow in the football community. You started to expand your life. And the same thing happens when you create a community around around mental health as well, is that you start to feel like, okay, well, these people are aware now, and it's you have this opportunity of where the thought processes start to change, and it's like, I can do something different. What am I doing this for? Those questions start to get asked, if you know what I mean, not by anybody else but yourself. And then you start to hold yourself accountable a little bit to your community, that you've got your wife, you've got your small group of friends that know about what's going on. So you have that option, and the to to be able to talk and to grow with them and help them understand, because there's obviously different things that trigger you. For example, like certain types of food, maybe it's certain things that you have not been acknowledged, so to speak, like bad days at work. So that combined with a ruby and a pint of beer after work, which for the non English speaking people is a curry and a pint. um you know it's those things combined could lead to that, or someone could have said something during the day that's subconsciously triggered something, and then the food is the next trigger that goes, this is, I feel bad about myself, so this is what I've got to do, because it's like, okay, it must be the food the reason I'm feeling bad, so I've got to go and do this thing, right? But if you've got that community, that feeling of a safe space, so to speak, it means that it's like, I don't have to feel this way. I don't have to consistently go through. And I know this is just a sheer guess, but I'm going to put it out on a limb that this is probably a reason why the instances are becoming a little bit less frequent for you. Is that you're slowly starting to grow, you're starting to trust this little bit of community a bit more, you're starting to grow in communication with this community a little bit more, especially now getting married. You're in contact with what was once a girlfriend is now a living partner that you see day in, day out, so you're held a little bit more accountable by her. Whether that's spoken or unspoken is only something you will know to a certain degree. But once you have that community, it means that you creating that safe space means that you can grow with it and you can start to understand it a little bit more.
Yeah, no, that's spot on. For me, I haven't ever really thought about it like that. It's more. I feel you just. My mindset is that when you kind of get into a serious relationship with someone, and then obviously like being married is the ultimate relationship, right? Because you I want to spend the rest of my life with someone. Is that it's that level of acceptance that that like someone loves you, and it's like, you know what, they just love you as a person. It's not, yeah, and yes, there's obviously a sense of attraction to someone, right, through the physical side of it, but through further time as a relationship develops, it's a deep and meaningful connection, and then that was something for me that I've got a phenomenal wife, who's unbelievable, and that was for me, that look, she just accepts me and she just loves me as who I am. She knows the so like the bad parts about it. She knows the good parts about it, but she still loves me. So so that was for me like a real thing. And then look, that doesn't mean that I now have 10 sort of Mars bars a night, but it's but you kind of go, you know what, you need that happy, healthy balance. And I still exercise. I still try and eat well, but I think I'm now in a position where it's you kind of find that happy medium, to go, look, I want to exercise, I want to be healthy, but I went too far. Like I really went too far. And I'm sure if you was to probably reflect on it as well, Joey, there would have probably been some warning signs for you, and I'm sure you would have seen it in me.
Yeah.
You know, around there was times where it was like, right, you know, like it was just exercise. You know what I mean? And it was all for the wrong reasons. And again, I'm sure if you, as I said, if you was to reflect back on that year or 18 months, I'm sure maybe there might be some warning signs for you to maybe look out for in the future as well, as you said.
Yeah, I mean, definitely. I mean, like, I've grown a lot in terms about understanding mental health, and especially in terms of, what I may have missed in plenty of clients that have come through the door just training a PT. It's like, I guess you kind of get lost in that world and thinking it's just that half an hour that you're with them, or it's just that 45 minutes, or it's just that hour. And your job in that hour is to look after that person's fitness goals. But there's obviously a lot more to that than just having a workout. There's so much more into it. And this is, I don't want to try and plug anything here, but this is, it's why I'm sort of working with you now to try and test this thing that I've been doing personally for the past couple of years, in terms of holding yourself accountable to certain things, in terms of it being a sort of a solution, like discipline as being a solution to being able to own different parts of your life. Because it's not just about fitness, or it's not just about nutrition, or just about work, or just about relationships, or just about any one particular thing. These things mold together, right? It's all part. So just because Chris is coming to the gym doesn't mean he leaves his work, his relationship, his nutrition, his everything else just at the door. Those things still come in with, and I think that's a massive part that needs to be included in a person's journey with fitness, because those things can cause like massive slip ups. And yeah, looking back at what we were saying, I recognized that, at the time I saw this guy's dedicated to his goal, man. He's got to this place and he wants more and he wants more. And it's like, in my eyes at that time, I remember thinking, man, I'm actually like inspired by this guy. But then you start to realize later on, it's like, man, I missed it. I missed something here. Like there was that board that was gone. Yeah, there's an inspiration level, but there's also, man, there's something deeper to this. There's something more. And by getting closer to you and talking to you a lot more, this is how I've come to understand what's been going on. And I guess the community level there between myself and yourself has grown just through communication. It's being able to ask, hey mate, is everything okay? There's something seems a little bit off. Is there something you want to talk about? Like, is going that little bit deeper and opening those lines of communication, no matter where you are, coach to client, friend to friend, colleague to colleague, husband to wife. Those lines of communication are really important in terms of growing and helping and supporting each other in terms of what we're going through. I mean, it's our relationship has never been just one way. I've, with that growth in communication between myself and yourself, you've helped me out with things in the footballing community, because once that lines of communication, it becomes bigger than just that first thing. Whether that first thing between me and you is going and having a workout and training you, but for other people it might be, it's just a lad I go to the pub with, or it's just that guy down at soccer training or football training or AFL training or rugby training or whatever. It's just, it's just that guy that sits in the cubicle two cubicles down from me. It's those opening up those lines of communication help with community and building that level of support, because at the end of the day, you never know what somebody may be going through. In your eyes, or looking back in my eyes, I saw a guy that was absolutely dedicated to staying fit and healthy, and had found a passion that he loved and was going whole hog with it. Yet on the flip side of that, it was something very, very different. So it's always good to have that different, I suppose, level of communication.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
So where where do you think you are in your journey right now? Like, it's interesting. I think where we're talking from is there's still obviously, like you mentioned, that it's this is a part of life for you. This is something for you to work with for the rest of your life, or even grow from. So what do you think sort of the next step for you?
Who knows? It's a huge. I think for me, it's something that I'm always going to have to manage, always going to have to live with. Yeah, it's a huge question. It's something that I am going to have to live with, something I'm going to have to manage. Am I managing it better than I was? Yes. Am I fearful that it could slip back to how it was? I'm not. I'm not. I think I've got that part of it under control, that I'm not going to get to that stage again, because and she's actually just walked in the room. I've got that support now, and then the whole time when it was at its worst, and it was at the worst stage, where it was every meal it was happening, or as I said, sitting in a changing room, or doing a coaching course and having lunch with the candidates, and then having to rush outside to the toilet and rush back in to sort of finish off the rest of the course. That was at its worst, because I didn't have that proper support person or support network of someone that I knew loved me, someone that I knew accepted me, someone that wants to be with me, and then like a life partner. So where I've got her now, I'm not scared that's ever going to come back. That real, like the real demon, but does it happen every now and then? Yeah, it does. As I said earlier, it happened 2 or 3 days ago. But they're sort of little spikes, and then I know I can manage them, and it's right. Why'd you do that? Don't do that. And then you put some mechanisms in place, and then it doesn't happen again for a while. So I think that's where it's going to be something I'm going to have to live with, but it's a lot easier to live with because I've got that very good support network in my wife.
Yeah. Yeah, that's really important, man. Like, I think that's one of the big things that we've sort of discovered in terms of talking about, the challenging in dealing with this little journey that you've gone through, is that that support is a key, right? I would say that from what I've learned so far from this, that you know, in fact, I want to let you say this. What would you take away as like being, if you could give a message to someone that's suffering from an eating disorder, or is in a certain part of the path that you've been on in the past, what sort of message do you think you could take away from the conversation we've had so far that you could give to them?
Great question. I mean, I'm going to do what all good journalists do, and flip it around a little bit and go, this isn't advice for someone else. This is advice for Chris in 2015 when it was at its worst.
Yeah, I like
if I could go back in the DeLorean and go back and sort of say that advice to me, would be tell the one or two people that you love the most, who are with you all the time, who are in your life, who you trust. Because even if you haven't got say like a partner, be it a girl or boy or whatever, you'll have that one friend or two friends that are just as good. You know what I mean? So tell them. So if I could go back in time and tell myself that advice, would be to not to have the conversation with you like I did.
Yeah.
Have the conversation with someone who's in my life, who I love, and who is going to be with me from day to day, because that's the hardest conversation. And then once you've had that, it's kind of like a weight off your shoulders, because as I said, like I said it to you, but you said it around the accountability, that I said it to you and I had the conversation, and then it was almost in the black box again in the back of my head, because it's like, right, I'm now not going to see Joey till tomorrow morning, and I'm only going to see him for half an hour.
Yeah.
And then I will talk about it for half an hour, but then as soon as I leave the gym, I'm now just like back to Chris, who works at the Football Federation. So it's whereas if I would have told someone that I love dearly, who I saw every day, who was gonna actually not pull me into line, but ask me some questions and ask me, why are you doing it? How does it make you feel? Like I do now, that is for me, Chris, in 2015, tell someone that you hold in very high regard, who's in your day-to-day life, and like anyone who's listening, do that as well. Like, think, who's the person that I love the most, who sees me all the time, who loves me, and tell them, and have that honest and tough conversation with them.
And as a thought of the person from the other side, like, let's say for your wife, for example, or anybody's partner, someone that they love and trust, if you can share that with that person, that's a deep, meaningful thing that obviously is quite challenging to say to anybody. It's even challenging to say to yourself at the start, to admit it. So to be able to share with that and give that as a gift to a person that you love, that will bring a massive, deep, meaningful new respect to your relationship, because it's a sign to them that you show that you trust them, to show that you love them enough to be able to share that in a space. And it will only bring a safe space, because that person loves you. And if you can trust them with something that big, then it's not a fearful thing. It's a beautiful thing, because it will bring a whole new dimension to a relationship. And I come from that, from obviously not from you telling me as the one that you love me and I love you, but as a place from, speaking from my wife and her opening up to things to me about things that are quite painful, and vice versa. It brings a whole new dimension to a relationship when you can give someone that gift.
No, 100% true, mate. And as I say, if I could go back to Chris, who lived at Coburn Central, 10 minutes from Onyx Gym in 2015, and tell him that advice, I think it would have. I think the journey might have been a little bit different.
Yeah. Well, you're on a great journey, mate, and it's at the end of the day, it's not about how long the journey lasts. It's not about like really about those little micro goals that you set for yourself. It's just about how you feel and experience life as you go through it. I mean, at the end of the day, we can only really affect what happens now. Like what we said 10 minutes ago in the podcast, we can't change it. Obviously, we can delete it and edit it, not that we're going to, but it's done, it's gone, it's been. All we can do is move forward in a positive way and move forward to doing things that make us feel good. And it's like it's a pleasure that you reached out to me just a couple of weeks ago. And this is me speaking openly and honestly to you, mate, is that you asked me for help with food, with a nutrition plan. And I sat down and I was like, what can I give Chris? I've got these nutrition plans and this and that. And I'm like, man, and this is where the switch happened. This is where the newer Joey from when you knew me back in 2015-16 is I said to myself, there's more to this. It's not just a nutrition plan. Like, we've worked on nutrition before. We've talked about nutrition before. It's something bigger. It's something, it's something that's going to take a lot longer than just following a nutrition plan. It's a little bit of accountability. It's ownership. And it's a pleasure to be moving forward with you on that journey, to be able to go, okay, well, let's figure this thing out. Let's work forward to not just sorting out nutrition, but sorting out a positive way that helps you move in a strong way forward for the rest of your life, like a better relationship with your wife and everybody around you, a better relationship with food, a better relationship with exercise and your day-to-day lifestyle. And I'm excited to see what happens for the future for you, mate. And I'm sure we'll be sat here on a podcast once again in 6, 12, 18, 24 months time, talking about the differences of what else has changed. Because I think there's always room to grow in everything. And I agree with you. Like, every single experience that happens to you is always going to be a part of your life, but it doesn't have to have the same effect now as it does in the future, or as it did 5 years ago as it does now. It's like I often talk to people about, my relationship with my dad, because I didn't have one. I didn't have that, and that affected me for a long time, to the point, where suicide was an option. But that will always be part of my life. I always own up to my, and say, look, this, I was once in that bad a state that, I wanted to end my own life. But and depression as well, it was a part of life. But that doesn't mean that I have the same feelings, the same energy, the same thoughts about it as I did then. You grow from it and grow with it to become something else, to become something bigger and better. And so long as you keep learning and growing, then the relationship with it becomes a lot better, if that makes sense.
No, that's certainly does. Certainly does.
Well, mate, it's been an absolute pleasure to listen to your story, and I'm so happy of what we're going to be doing together in the future as well. And since the coronavirus here in Australia is slowly starting to dim off, we're heading back to work and stuff like that. Things are definitely going to change, and it's going to be an interesting climate that we all move through now. And for people that are listening out, that are going through any mental health issues, whether it's eating disorders, depression, anything like that, it really is a scary time right now. It's a scary moment in life where radical change is not just something that may come across, you know, over the course of a few months. It's like it could happen tomorrow. It could happen in 5 minutes. We just don't know. But if there's anything that I personally would like people to take away from this, is that community is there, support is there, the help is there. You've got people like Chris to be able to listen to show that, you know, that there is growth there, to be able to move forward and to be able to ask for help, support, and for acknowledgement of what you're actually going through. So please don't be alone. Please understand that we're here to help and support and put you in the right direction. And there's plenty of people just like Chris who, you know, have owned their own situation to a strength that want to help and support the community. And I'm sure that, you know, Chris would be more than happy to talk about this further and deeper on another podcast one day. If there's any questions about there that we can sort of go through and answer.
Yeah, absolutely. And if anyone does want to reach out, then I'm more than happy for that to happen.
Awesome, man. That's beautiful of you, buddy. Well, mate, we'll end it there for episode 12 of the Obsidian Project podcast. It's a pleasure having Chris on, and we'll look forward to hearing more about your story in the future, mate.
Top man. Cheers, Joey. Really, really enjoyed it, mate. Really something I was quite fearful of doing at the start, and very good and a little bit apprehensive. I think this is our fourth time of having a crack, but very much pleased that you've given me the platform to do it, mate. And I think just to echo your thoughts, you should be very proud of the stuff that you are offering to the community, mate. And yes, it might appear to you that it's a small role, but if you're having an impact on one or two people, that's fantastic, mate.
Thanks, mate. Really appreciate that.
Anytime. You're not bad for a gooner.
Not bad for a hammer, mate.
Exactly.
All right, mate. Catch you soon, buddy.
Yeah, mate. Take it easy. See you, mate.
Thanks again, guys, for tuning into this episode of the Obsidian Project podcast. It's been great having you listen along. We'd like to thank once again our sponsors for 2020, getsome.com.au. Don't forget to use your 10% discount OP10 and our host Cafe Royale in Coburn. And now stay tuned for this important message. For those listening, or for those in need of any immediate help, please contact Lifeline on 131114 or Beyond Blue at 1300 224636 for those in Australia. Or they also have a website, beyondblue.com.au. If anyone listening to this outside of Australia, feel free to contact us at theobsidianproject.com. Our email addresses are there, and we'll direct you to the best available source in your area. Thanks very much again, guys. Show your support to anyone around you and share this podcast to anyone you think may need it.